it's no longer a question of do we legalize or not. The question now is how do we do it responsibly, and how do we make sure that we're protecting our communities?
Are you interested in disciplining an officer who writes somebody a ticket for having pot?
No.
Now, that's just some of the reaction from officials in Portland, Maine. That's just one of several cities in the U.S. that chose to legalize recreational marijuana this week at the polls. All right. Non-debatable is where the public opinion is in this country on this. All the polls say this thing's moving. It has the feel of how fast gay marriage moved. And now there's an economic component to it. Dominic, take a guess. 5 years from now, is it going to be safe politically, not just in Colorado and Washington, we can add our jokes, right, to do this as an elected official and say, some of them are saying, hey, I can pay for more school funding here, just let's tax pot. You know what I mean?
5 years from now, it may even reach New York. I think 5 years from now, you're talking about the marijuana.
Yes.
5 years from now, gay marriage and marijuana will be sweeping throughout the country.
Keep in mind, Colorado and Washington, the two states where it's legal, it happened by referendum. Politicians didn't have to take a stand on it. It's still a complicated position to take because it opens you up to being soft on drugs, soft on crime, soft on social issues. So it's a brave politician who sticks his neck out there.
In a funny way, isn't it a libertarian kind of thing? Couldn't you argue that for some on the right, if you want to keep government out, this is...
And libertarians have made the argument before. That's one of the reasons I think Ron Paul, one of the reasons he's got so much support behind him is because it's part of his libertarian argument. Former governors of Kentucky have supported it for the libertarian aspect and also because it helps the farmers out. I mean, there are other arguments for it, but it's, again, the politician who sticks their neck out on this is few and far between.
What's interesting is if you go to California, which doesn't have full legalization but has medical marijuana, some of the dispensaries are actually unionized. So you actually have not only good union jobs, but you all of a sudden have institutional players who see the advantage in protecting the industry.
So you guys counsel clients here. Is this a position that you could be, a fiscally responsible lawmaker, whether it be in a county or on a state level, and say, this is good policy?
You can do it. You can argue it on a libertarian point. I have a real problem with it on 2 points. One is that I've been in recovery for many years, so I fear what that can do to people, because I know there's a percentage of people that will try pot because it's legal.
I asked him that question about the gateway aspect to it, and he said no, and
but
studies have shown no.
But for the pot alone, I have no people who have committed suicide smoking pot. I mean, whatever. That's a percentage of the population is going to have a problem with it.
And you think it sends the wrong message too?
Well, that's the second problem that I have with it. The libertarian in me says maybe. The other problem I have is that government has trained an entire generation that it has their best interests in mind. Don't smoke cigarettes, no trans fat, no, the sodas in New York City. It's like government is the one that really cares about you, and then they're throwing you to the wolves with pot legalization because they want the tax revenue.
But they'd argue, like we did with cigarettes, we have the warning label on the side. Like we do with drinking and driving, we have the PSAs and stuff. But they still put the product out there. It's up to you to make a decision. I'm conflicted on this.
They're doing it because they want the money. They just want the money. Ultimately they're not caring about people with this. They want the money. They want the tax revenue. And I think the reason that the polling is moving up is that politicians and other organizations are beginning to push it as an issue in the media, and they're good at it.
I would just think that one of the reasons the polling is moving up, and you talked about 1969, only 12% supported legalization. Well, if you were 19 years old in 1969, you're 65 years old now. You're a senior citizen who's traditionally viewed as being more conservative.
But look, they showed it by age groups, and in the 18 to 30, it's right there on the screen. 2/3 want this. And
I think it happens, but there'll be a price to pay societally. There'll be a price.
A couple of points. First of all, marijuana use more prevalent in the 18 to 21-year-old crowd now than alcohol use. Why? Because it's not regulated. It's harder to get beer, harder to get booze if you're not 21 yet, because we have all these restrictions that are in place. And as for the other point, and I congratulate you on the recovery, but we're not going to close up bars anytime soon. And I think a lot of people have just equated it with it's no more harmful than alcohol.
The one part that I was just confused on, he made it clear in the interview that people can see online, is I wasn't sure how the law worked. And I said, can you smoke in Colorado or Washington a joint walking down the sidewalk or have a bong on a park bench? He's like, no, you have to do it in the confines of your home. But my whole thing was, okay, somebody smokes a J before they go to work. They're going to be compromised when they get to work or if they get behind a forklift or everything. He said it's the same argument as you can't drive drunk or you can't do the same things if you were drunk. I just think from a practical purpose, nobody's going to open up a few beers unless they got a real problem at 8 o'clock in the morning, but they might smoke earlier on the break or something. I don't know.
I would counter that by saying only the people who have a real problem with it are the ones who are going to light up before they go to work in the same way. It's also, they're developing ways to measure the whole thing. There's another interesting argument here too, which is even in places like Colorado and Washington State, pre-employment drug screening still takes place. And there's no protection for medical marijuana patients in California. There was a big case there where, you know, I've got a prescription to smoke marijuana because I've got an ailment, but I got drug tested at work and I got bounced out of my job. There's no protection there.
You also have the slippery slope. If marijuana, why not hash? if hash, then why not THC?
Bob Marley?
THC. I mean, but it's the same arguments for all these drugs. It's the same thing ultimately when you get down to it. It's a really dangerous slope there.
If you circle back to what you asked Dominic before, will it happen in 5 years? I'd just go back to something I said earlier. You know, as you have medical marijuana legal in New Jersey and in Massachusetts, and that's sweeping the country. We can't even get that passed in New York because, as I said earlier, Albany's a place where good ideas go to die.
The only difference is this one, you could make the argument if you're being alien mercenary, you say, this is money. We tax this thing, look at the money it'll be, and we won't have to close down X, Y, and Z. In fact, I can open up A, B, and C for schools. If it's all about money, then it's a harder thing to say no to. Forget about the ethics of it.
We talked about casinos and the competitive advantage.
Yep.
Why is anybody going to stay here when they could go, you know, there could be a competitive advantage if you legalize marijuana and open up the casinos. Atlantic City, I've often wondered why they didn't do that.
But the reason they're doing the casinos is because they want the tax revenue. Again, it's the government not giving a damn about its constituents.
I 100% agree.
It's just
isn't
the tax
about,
revenue.
You know,
Right.
looking out for the citizens, looking out for the revenue, so you don't have to make a tough cut. It's going to be fascinating how this plays out because the polls clearly say the direction the American public's going on this a lot faster than I thought. All right, we're going to be right back. More RFL. Stay with us.